Hello, my name's David Brown. I'm speaking to you from my house in Brunei on the subject of using the lever of technology to improve the quality of education through cooperation. Now, you may have noticed that you could read the title of this talk a lot quicker than I could read it out loud, and that's rather significant. But even more significant than that is that we can absorb more information by watching moving images than we can by listening to somebody reading out some words. The reason for this is that the human brain is mostly used for looking at things, especially moving things, and especially human faces. So if you think about it, as you're sitting there watching the face on the screen, because that's what grabs your attention the most, you're not using your brain as well as you could to absorb information that will be of use to you later on. Well, you've heard the old story that a picture is worth 1,000 words. I think it would take rather more than 1,000 words for you to describe all the nuances of the picture that you're looking at right now. The Metamorphosis of Narcissus by Salvador Dali is very well known. And in case you're not quite sure what that metamorphosis is, on the left you see Narcissus looking at his reflection in the pond, and on the right you see a rather bony hand which is supporting an egg between three rather thin fingers. And just to add a little more effect, a plant seems to be growing out of that egg. You can take all this in a few milliseconds as you look at the picture, but it takes ages to describe it. Well, let's look at another aspect of transferring information to people. One way to do it is to move the people to the information. We've all moved to this hotel in KL, which is rather expensive in terms of energy, of moving all of us to the same physical location. It would be a lot cheaper to move the information to the people. So how can we move information to people? Well, we could have a live meeting like we're having right now. Well, in fact, we're not, because I'm not actually here. I'm in my house in Brunei reading this to you. Anyway, it costs a lot of energy and money to get all of you here into this one room so that you could listen to my recording. We move a lot of information to people on paper, and that has a few ecological disadvantages as well as being rather energy expensive. Telephone is quite good, but it has the drawback that it requires synchronization. We've both got to be on the end of the telephone at the same time. Television, the wonder of the 20th century, is a great way of transferring moving images to people, but it does have the problem that because it's broadcast, the schedule has to be set up in advance, and the people that are receiving it don't have very much control, although video tape recorders do provide some use in this respect. And in the late 20th, early 21st century, we've got this thing called the web. And that provides asynchronous transmission. They transmit it when they want, and you receive it when you want. So the user has full control over when and where and how they receive the information. Unfortunately, as it stands today, the internet has some drawbacks. It's quite an expensive thing, really, to create the infrastructure. And the internet at the moment has a fairly low bandwidth, so that it's not very good for transmitting movies. So let us try and think of some alternatives to using internet to transmit movies to people. Well, what about DVDs? Factual information doesn't change that fast, and you can reuse a DVD over and over again, and it costs less than paper. On the subject of tutoring, well, we can all get together in the same room, that's one way. Energy expensive, needs scheduling, must be synchronous. Well, if you want to have a chat, it's got to be synchronous. But there's an alternative to all going in our cars to the same room in the same town, and that would be to use an internet video conference. But there are asynchronous ways, such as internet forums and email, and perhaps most importantly of all from the point of view of university education, frequently asked questions. If I may quote to you Brown's law of tutoring, which has just been invented, I'm Brown, and that is, if somebody has a question, you can bet somebody else will too. Now, what's the answer to a question? Well, it could be somebody talking, or it could be a movie. So let's see if we can summarize the differences between a university where you get everything under one roof and a multivarsity where you get everything under many roofs. Universities have live lectures. The multivarsity could use DVD delivered presentations which can be much richer than a talking head, and those presentations could be created not by one head but by many heads working together. Two heads are better than one, and although it is true that a camel is a horse that was designed by a committee, it's not true that one person can explain something better than a whole team of people working together to make a movie. Working together, cooperating to produce good quality information can be done if universities work together. Other advantages of this are that we don't need lecture theatres anymore. We can just have tutor rooms, local tutors, much cheaper than these foreign lecturers. And what about interaction? There isn't a lot of interaction going on in this room right now because there's one talking head and a bunch of people listening. The same is true as if I was actually saying this instead of playing a tape or a recording of me having said it in my house. You can get more tutors for the same money than you can lecturers, so the opportunity for more interaction with the students exists for the same money.